Hello everyone and welcome to Radio Offside. It's a great honor for us today to be joined by a well-known football journalist on our show, Gabriele Marcotti. He's a senior writer for ESPN and Corriere dello Sport correspondent. He's also co-host of the Gab and Jules podcast. Gab has also written and co-authored a few number of books such as Autobiography of Paolo Di Canio, Fabio Capello, and Claudio Ranieri. Also in conjunction with Gianluca Vialli, he has written two books called The Italian Job and Goals. Hope you enjoyed this interview, and if so, please do not forget to click on the like and subscribe buttons down below. Without further ado, let us begin. Welcome to another special interview episode of Radio Offside. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by one of my favorite sports journalists, Gabriele Marcotti. Hi, Gab. Thanks for accepting our invitation and welcome to our show.
Hi, delighted to be on and you're very kind. Thank you.
Thanks. The pleasure is on us to have you here. Well, Gab, 2021 is behind of us and you've already published your wish list for the new year on ESPN. One of your wishes is about Super League, and Super League is our favorite topic on the show as well. I read your wish for our listeners that the European Super League and its proponents go away and have a long, hard think. I mean, I know this is your wish, but realistically, what do you expect to happen this year with the Super League, as we know that the European Court of Justice would proceed with the case? And I think recently Dortmund CEO also stated in his interview with Bild that Super League is not off the table.
No, and I think if you're a big European club like Dortmund, you're never going to say Super League is off the table because it weakens your position, right? I think we should always remember that the threat of Super League is what's been used by big European clubs to be able to negotiate better terms for themselves in UEFA competitions, and also to kind of orchestrate the balance of power. So it's not entirely with UEFA. It'll be interesting, this case brought before the European Court of Justice, if it gets that far, and if we have an actual ruling, which is very much to be seen. I think it speaks to the core of what is pretty much essential about the sport and how we view football. As you know, I think roughly speaking, there's three different outcomes. They can either kick it down the road and send it back and not issue a ruling, which I think might be the most, if I'm cynical, me says that is the most realistic proposition at this time, simply because there's other things going on. This is a political court. They have to take into account the climate or whatever. They can say, look, the current setup clearly violates European Union competition laws for business, which is the case that Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Juventus are arguing, because you have an organization that is at once regulator and competition organizer, and also judiciary or disciplinary body, if you will. This is anti-competitive. This hurts the clubs that are involved. The clubs and the national leagues compete with UEFA for sponsors and commercial deals and so on. So this is anti-competitive. And I think they would have personally, I'm not a lawyer or a judge, but I think they would have a pretty strong case. Or it can go the other way, and they can say, yeah, look, it does violate competition law, but guess what? Public schools violate competition laws. Public National Health Service violates competition laws. The army violates competition laws, right? I can't start my own private army and buy my own private tanks and parade around. There's all these other things. The banking system isn't unregulated. That violates pure free market competition law. The energy market, the gas market, higher education, universities, research, if they say football is not purely an industry, football is some sort of intrinsic part of European culture, and therefore is subject to certain protections, certain antitrust exemptions, if you will, I think there would be a strong case for them to make. And look, this is a political court, right? If most people feel at this time that this would be a popular decision to make because it would protect the pyramid, it would give a certain specificity, that would be a very big win for anybody who never wants to see the Super League take off. And so I think that's why this decision is so important if it comes. Again, I don't know that they're going to go that far, but ultimately, while courts are supposed to be independent and whatever else, ultimately, courts are political. This court is more political than most. And I also think they could also, I think quite strongly, if they wanted to, make the point that, Super League project, let's not forget, was never a breakaway Super League. If you speak to them and say, we didn't want to break away and do our own things. No. We wanted to have, and again, I don't know how popular European basketball and the EuroLeague is in Iran. I'm going to guess probably not super popular, but it's very big in Spain. And it's not coincidental that Real Madrid are a part of it, because this is exactly what happened in European basketball 20 years ago. The big clubs got together. There was a European Cup at the time, like the old European Cup that we have in football. And they said, no, we want to play more games. We want to run our own competitions. We want to have a seat at the table. They actually broke away for a full year. There were two separate European Cups. And then they came back, and the competition still exists. And FIBA, which is the equivalent, FIBA Europe, which is the equivalent of UEFA, plays a role in this. This is what they wanted. They wanted to make this competition, run the competition, decide how it was organized, and then do so with UEFA's blessing. So UEFA would help decide how the other 5 teams in it were. They would take over some disciplinary, some regulatory aspects, but they would be the shareholders. That's kind of what they wanted. So it wasn't a purely entrepreneurial thing. So that's a whole other thing, which I don't think has been fully explored, which obviously you would need to sift through as well, because that's a whole other level. It's kind of an intermediate level from the two extremes that I described. So yeah, it's going to be pretty critical if they come to a verdict this year.
Good points. But if we go back and think about when they announced the whole European Super League project, do you think they really wanted to proceed with that, or was it just like a feasibility study to see how are the reactions, how will UEFA will react, and then maybe at the end they will present it in the court?
No, I think they definitely wanted. Leaving aside that the execution of this, I thought, was absolutely terrible. In the sense, it's just terrible as in badly done. They did a really poor job of explaining their positions. They did a very poor job of trying to win over public opinion. They completely miscalculated the reactions. I don't think it was a negotiating ploy because, 48 hours earlier, Andrea Agnelli, the president of the European Clubs Association and one of the Super League holdouts, he told his members, okay, we've reached a deal. Let's vote for it. Let's support it. That's not a serious plan. If you make a serious plan, I think you have to make the case to public opinion. And, to this day, Agnelli said it again recently, Juve, Florentino Perez keeps saying it. They say, oh, this is necessary because the whole system is messed up. The whole system is hemorrhaging money. The whole system is unsustainable. And they say, young people aren't watching football. Florentino Perez says they should have 60-minute games. If you're going to say these things, you have to bring data, because there's going to be some opinion leaders who are going to take your face value and say, okay, let's look at the facts. Is this right or is it wrong? And I'm sorry, but in the last 2 years before COVID, so going back, financial fair play was introduced in 2011, right? From 2011 to 2017, European club football lost money. They started off with losing 1.8 billion a year. The last 2 seasons, before COVID hit, they actually made a profit. The European football actually became an investable business. How you can say that the system is broken, it's falling apart, when you're losing, you're actually making money pre-COVID. Even during COVID, Real Madrid made a profit. Who's top of the Bundesliga? Real Madrid. I just thought it was extraordinary. I'm sorry, this is not a plausible, it's not a plausible explanation. You have to convince people that there's a need for this. And they certainly didn't do that. This evidence that you're saying that kids are playing video games and so on, it's exactly what an old person would say without knowing, what's actually going on. Bring the evidence, bring the data. You've done market research. Okay, fine. Show me that people under the age of 25 or under the age of 18 aren't watching football, aren't spending money on football. They never brought any evidence. They just talked and talked and talked.
They published some kind of a surveys, right?
But even the one survey that they cited, which was a FIFA survey, they completely misunderstood. I think this is very problematic. And to me, what it looks like is that purely a power grab. And far more simply, I am for a free market. In a free market, if you're losing money, then what you do is you either increase revenue or you cut costs. The problem with cutting costs in football is that it's difficult to do. And obviously you've got the fans saying, no, go and sign Haaland, sign Mbappe, sign this one, sign that one, right? That's the problem. You have to have the balls to go and do that. You have the balls come out and say, we made a mistake when we paid 100 million for Hazard. We made a mistake when we gave Ramsey that enormous deal, or whatever other things you did. Maybe even we made a mistake with Cristiano Ronaldo because it didn't fit our business model, right? You have to have the courage to do that. You cut your costs, or you increase your revenue if you're able to do that. But even their plan, even the new UEFA Champions League format, what is it? How are you increasing revenue? Play more games. I'm sorry, the marginal increase, every extra game you play becomes smaller and smaller. You don't have to be an economist to understand that. Anybody, why don't we play every day? Yeah, we'll increase revenue over time, and then overall globally on a per match basis, we'll lose money. So it was just distinctly unimaginative. They didn't even, I'll give you another example, two examples that really bothered me, right? If you think back to their original statement that went out, all these clubs that they're so forward thinking and so on, they had one sentence on women's football. A women's competition will be added in due course, right? Anybody, whether you believe it or not, they all talk about how important women's game is and how it's a new frontier tap. And all you can do is put one line in. When they talked about how much they're going to give in solidarity payments, so first of all, the average football fan, if you mention solidarity payments, they have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Solidarity payments are very important. So they should have, had I been in charge of the Super League, I would have said, first thing we need to do, explain to everybody how we're going to generate far more money than now. And that money's going to go back to the clubs to make the system sustainable. Because that's what solidarity payments are, right? Instead, all they said is, we're going to give 10 billion or whatever it is over the course of the agreement. But they don't even mention what the course of the agreement is. So I'm sorry, if I'm a fan of a club outside of these, I say, okay, so are we getting more money or less money? Or because if the course of the agreement is 1,000 years, I'm not getting more money, right? So all these little things, to me made it seem like it was something that was rushed through. They were going to try to strong arm UEFA either back to the negotiating table. And they said, we're ready to negotiate and hopefully, get their terms through. I think they would have been prepared. They had 20 teams, 15 permanent members. UEFA had come back and said, okay, we'll have 24 teams, 15 permanent and 9 qualify every year. It would have been fine. That's all right. We're good with that. I think that's how they viewed it. And no, it was just completely misreading the situation. I think it was also misreading the clubs who were in there for different reasons. And that was the other big issue. You had certain clubs like Tottenham, like Arsenal, like Inter, like Milan, who, had lost a lot of money and they were there because they needed this. They can't afford to be left out. It would be a mortal blow to be left out. Atletico Madrid, I'd put in that category as well. You had other clubs like Real Madrid who Florentino's been talking, to be fair to him, he's been talking about this for 30 years. You had other clubs like Manchester City, like Liverpool, Manchester United, who don't need this, but they want it because their owners want to make more money, because they have individual owners who stand to benefit themselves. Let's not forget, Florentino Perez wasn't going to personally benefit from this because he doesn't own Real Madrid. He's just the president of it. And then you had others like Chelsea and Manchester City who are kind of like, I don't really need this. This might actually hurt me. I'll go along from the inside because I don't want to be left out. But, and it's not surprising that Chelsea and City were the first clubs out the door, as soon as the wind changed, let's say.
Another question about some sort of regarding that is that one of the arguments against the idea of Super League executive was that they might introduce some fundamental changes in the football rules, such as shortening the games, as you pointed out. But we've already seen the introduction of VAR and also abolition of the away goals rule in European football as sort of fundamental changes. And also another one coming up, according to IFAB, that 5 substitute rules might become permanent. What is your opinion on that, and specifically about this 5 substitutes rule?
Well, personally, I'm in favor of the 5 substitution rule. In England, where I live, there's a lot of opposition to it because smaller clubs say that it favors bigger clubs. I have 2 things to say to that. Number one, we already know, because we've had 5 substitutes in other leagues. We already know, and we can test whether it's true or not, right? They've had 5 substitutions in every major European league since the pandemic. And we can see it doesn't favor big clubs. You look at the big clubs, they dominate less than before. So that's just nonsense. Unless you think there's something specific about the Premier League, which makes the Premier League special, which I can assure you a lot of people think. There's this wonderful English specificity, which means that other rules that apply to other people don't need to apply to them. The other thing is, they make the argument based on the fact that, but if I'm Manchester United and I can turn to the bench, or if I'm Liverpool, look, I've got Minamino and Curtis Jones and Origi and Jota on the bench, and that's better than whoever is on the bench for Burnley, for example. But that's the incorrect way of looking at it. You need to look at the difference in quality between the 15th and 16th best player on a team versus the 7th and 8th best player on a team. Because those are the substitutions that we're talking about, right? You could already make 3 substitutions. So if the gap between Mohamed Salah and Minamino is bigger than the gap between, I've used this before, say Ashley Barnes and Matej Vydra, then it doesn't help Liverpool, because they're bringing on a player who might be better than the Burnley guys, but is going to be a lot worse than Mohamed Salah. I don't see why this is so difficult to understand. I think what it does is it favors teams that are built a certain way, favors teams that, have 16, 17 players on a comparable standard. Like Manchester City, for example, where we see, if Foden plays or if Bernardo Silva plays or if De Bruyne plays, there's not much difference. They're all really good in that system.
Exactly.
It hurts teams that have, a very set 11, and there's a big drop off with the substitutes. But again, you look at the fact, 2 of the smartest, most intelligent, most progressive managers in the Premier League, Thomas Frank at Brentford and Graham Potter at Brighton, are both in favor of 5 substitutions. That should make you think. Those are small teams, right? They're not big, rich teams, but they've built the squad a certain way. And they say, this helps me because that way I can change things tactically. I've got more flexibility, in addition to the player welfare issue. So I think you have to come up with better reasons than just say it helps the big teams, because I think it's very clear. The evidence shows that it doesn't necessarily do that.
But in the longer run, wouldn't it affect the distribution of the players among the teams? Because currently, if we can imagine that in each matches, at least 15 players are gonna, or 15 outfit players are gonna play, then the nagging of the players who are on the bench would decrease. And then the bigger clubs, then they will be in favor of going to the bigger clubs because they can still see that, okay, I will get the play time. You know what I mean? Then it wouldn't be distributed as we have seen before.
So you're sorry. So if I understand what you're saying is, because you would still get a chance to come on the pitch at a bigger club, then you wouldn't mind being at a bigger club and not starting. And
exactly.
I mean, with all due respect, I think that's a pretty esoteric argument and pretty far-fetched. I don't, footballers all want to play, right? I've been around footballers for 25 years. Some only care about money. Most care about playing. If you care about playing, you're not going to be happy. Oh, look, I've come on for the last 10 minutes when we were winning 4-0 against the bottom team on the table. That's not going to do it for you. And I think that's where most of these players are in. Players aren't stupid. If they're at a club, they know, who's part of the hierarchy, who's part of the plan, and they know where they stand. And if you're a veteran player, it's different with kids because kids, want opportunities. But if you're a player mid-career and you're not starting and you're not playing regularly, not going to be 5 or 10 minutes here or there that are going to change your opinion about whether you want to stay at the club or not. It's going to be your willingness to take a pay cut to go somewhere else. I think that's the main discriminant.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about players' contracts and contract extensions, mainly in Italy. We have seen conflicts between a handful of players and their clubs in terms of their contract extension just before their contract expiry, like Donnarumma, Hakan, Kessie, Insigne, and recently Paulo Dybala. Have players and their agents become greedy, or do they deserve to earn what they ask for?
Well, I think on your question about deserve, there's two answers, right? You deserve to be paid whatever you can get, right? That's kind of the standard answer. And if that is your main driver, then I think you're entitled to go and drive a hard bargain and, make a hard competition. But not every team has the same amount of money. Not every team is in a similar situation. And I think you have to evaluate each player for the contribution that they can bring to their team. So in the case of Gigio Donnarumma, for example, they took a very hard line. Milan said, we're going to call your bluff. You're a goalkeeper. Most teams in Europe already have very good goalkeepers. So he ended up signing for Paris Saint-Germain, where he alternates with Keylor Navas. He doesn't make much more money than he was making before. Sorry, he makes more money than he was making before, but he doesn't make more money than what Milan's final contract offer was. Milan have replaced him with a guy who, makes about 1/3 of what they would have paid them, or maybe even less. In fact, simply looking at the amortization of Mike Maignan contract, plus what they paid Mike Maignan is less than what they were willing to pay Donnarumma. So they've saved money and they have an asset. I think Maignan, when he's not injured, is, I'm not going to say he's as good as Donnarumma because I'm Italian and Donnarumma will always have a special place in my heart. But realistically, I don't think, Maignan isn't the reason that, Real Madrid, Milan are competing for the Serie A title. If it wasn't for the craziness against Spezia the other day, they'd be in first place right now. So it made sense. You put a limit and you stick to it and you're disciplined about it. Same thing with Çalhanoğlu. I know Çalhanoğlu's done very well for Inter, better than I thought he would. He turned down their offer because Inter offered in net terms a little over €1 million more a year. But Milan put a value on him. Milan said, okay, if we give you this contract, you're going to cost X much. And in 3 years, in 2 years, you're going to want an extension, or we're going to have to sell you. In 2 years, you're going to be in your late 20s. You're going to be on a salary that not many clubs outside of England and outside of the top clubs can afford. You're not going to move to Real Madrid or Bayern Munich at that stage of your career. How are we ever going to get rid of you if you don't play? You can't. Then we're stuck with you until your contract expires, and that's it. And so they said, this is what we think you can bring to the team. I think it's the right attitude. Now, it may be painful, and you mentioned the Dybala case.
Exactly.
To me, what we're seeing is the market having its effect. The market, you've seen clubs realizing that not money well spent. Paulo Dybala, since 2018, funny enough, when Cristiano Ronaldo arrived at Juventus, Paulo Dybala has missed more than 50% of Juve's league starts. He scored, I think it's something like 1 goal every 3.5 games. I know he's not, that's not his main job, but still not like an incredible return. And he's asking for a contract that, from what's been reported, I'm pretty sure it's accurate, is 8 million euros net plus 2 million euros in easy to achieve bonuses for the first 2 years. And if he achieves them, then he gets the money automatically for the final 2 years of his contract. Okay, 10 million euros a year. For those who think in pounds per week, which is the way they do it in the Premier League, it works out to about 305,000 pounds per week. Let me ask you this, and you might know if you saw my tweet, but do you know how many players in the Premier League make more than that? 6.
No, I saw that. 6, exactly.
6 players. 4 of them play for Manchester United, because United, let's face it, aren't exactly a model club in that sense. One of them is Lukaku, who just arrived from Inter and is a center forward, and people will debate whether it was right or wrong to give him that much money. And the other one is Kevin De Bruyne. And with all due respect to Paulo Dybala, first of all, it's a 2-year extension for De Bruyne, by the way, not something that leads him into his mid-30s. Paulo Dybala and Kevin De Bruyne aren't in the same stratosphere. And Manchester City is a far wealthier club right now with more money and an owner that can just keep putting money in. So what are we talking about? He's upset because he thought they had agreed to that. I mean, I think Juventus should have never agreed to it, if they did agree to it. And now they're doing the right thing and going back and, reviewing where they are and saying, hey, how much money do we really want to give this guy? Where are we? How much can we afford? What happens if we don't finish top 4? So I think he's right. And I think even if it's purely strategic, because I'll tell you what, Paulo Dybala goes on the market. If his agent goes around, starts knocking on doors, I ask myself, which clubs are going to say, yeah, Paulo, come here. We'll pay you 10 million a year. Seriously, I'm curious. Is he going to go to, Manchester United, case unto themselves. There's no logic to what United do. But I think most would agree they have enough attacking players, right? Not going to be Manchester City. Chelsea already have 1 billion attacking players. Where's he going to go? Arsenal already have good younger players in that position. They're not going to make him their highest paid player because maybe they learned their lesson with Aubameyang. It's not a good idea. Real Madrid have Vinicius and Mbappe maybe on his way. What are they going to do with Dybala, right? And they want Haaland. And they still have Benzema. Barcelona don't have any money. Atletico Madrid, again, Joe Felix, Griezmann, Correa, all these guys. And then you think they're going to want to make him their highest paid player? No. Where are you going to go? Are you going to go to Paris Saint-Germain to replace Mbappe? Maybe. Will that make you happy? Is that the big time? Is this what you're going to do? So if I'm Juve, I'd be relaxed. I can take that, 10 million net a year is it's nearly 20 million euros. I think Juve can spend 20 million euros better and more meaningfully on other players. And those people who say, oh, but where are you going to find another number 10? Maybe you don't find a number 10. Maybe you don't play with a number 10. Maybe you play 4-3-3. Maybe you spend that money on a center forward. We have to get away from this idea that, players have the balance of power. I think the balance of power is shifting, in fact, away from players. Because Look at Paul Pogba. From January 1st, he could have signed with any club in Europe. Still at Manchester United. Now he's going to run his contract down. They're going to wait. They're going to see. But United didn't get scared. United are calling his bluff. United are calling Jesse Lingard's bluff. We're seeing this incredible. Chelsea are doing it with Antonio Rudiger, with Andreas Christensen. They said, "We'll pay you what we think you're worth." So I think there's a bit of a rebalancing there, and I think that's a good thing.
Two quick questions on it. Isn't Juventus concerned about Inter's offer, 7.5 million for Dybala, and it would become kind of their direct rival?
I mean, so first of all, that would assume that Dybala would agree to move to Inter for the same amount of money that he's making now, for 30% less than what he wanted from Juve. I mean, personally, no, you don't make a move to stop Dybala. And if Inter get the Dybala of the last 3.5 years, frankly, it helps Juve. In all honesty. I mean, I know it's been mentioned. Look, there's a number at which it makes sense and Dybala becomes attractive, right? But Dybala would have to turn around and say, "Oh, now I'm so angry with Juve that I'll take less money and go somewhere else. That's how angry I am." In which case, Juve fans, I would hope, would say, "Great, don't let the door hit you in the ass on your way out." Because frankly, people could understand if you move elsewhere for a bigger team, a better project, more money. If you just do it out of spite, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it would be a good move for Inter either, especially given Inter's current financial situation, which is really not good.
True. That's good. And another one from the club's perspective, if the players stay until the end of their contract and they go away with Bossman, then the club cannot register any capital gains in the longer run. If the number of players with the same situation grows, isn't it a little bit complicated situation for the clubs? Or the wages are more important for them?
Look, I think, those capital gains you're talking about, those are just paper gains.
Yeah.
Right? And all they do is they make your books look a little bit better to somebody who doesn't know how to read the books, which hopefully isn't serious investors. And it often means that you don't have to take on more debt to balance the book, or owners don't have to put in equity, which is the real reason that these things happen. But I think that's all it means. At a well-run club, when a player has 2 years left, you sell him or you extend him. I think it's as simple as that. Or you put your faith in the player. Let's say Juve have a great end of the season this year. Let's say Dybala takes Juve to the Champions League final and they finish second or third in the league and everything's great. And Dybala's happy with Allegri and he's scoring and so on. What about having some faith that Dybala says, you know what? 29, I think he turns 29 in November. And what if he says, you know what? I'll take the same money I'm making now. I don't need a pay rise. Take that money that you save and get me a center forward who I can set up. I want to win something. We're on the right track with Allegri. I want to be a part of it. I've spent 7 years here, or however long it's been, right? You gave me the captain's armband. Ronaldo's gone. This will be my team. I'll be the Ronaldo. And Chiesa will come back. I mean, these people are human, right? You would think. I think, yes, there are some players who are clearly motivated just by that. But at some point, that's what I would want from my player if I were running a club, somebody who had that attitude. I wouldn't live in this, certainly not at a big club like Juve. I wouldn't live in fear of the guy leaving me because somebody offers him $1 million more a year. I would tell myself, this is not the player I want, not the player I need. And also, in the end, with all due respect to Dybala, we're talking about Dybala here. We're not talking about Kylian Mbappe or Erling Haaland. We're talking about Paulo Dybala. I think people are still stuck on the idea of Dybala, what we thought Dybala was going to be when he was younger. I mean, to me, no. To me, it's a no-brainer. Hold tight, believe in yourself, rebuild the team, lose these big, stupid contracts that you signed, and It applies to Dybala. It applies to, I mean, I wrote this recently. I think they have 9 players who are out of contract this summer or next year. Rebuild through youth. Get rid of these big contracts. You know, you can be down a season or two. It's not going to be the end of the world if you show that you're moving in the right direction, that you have a plan. You don't even have the excuse that they had. Okay, you had Cristiano, you spend all this money on Cristiano. With Cristiano, obviously, you're going to win. You have to try to win now. No, you don't have that. You know, as I pointed out, Juve finished 7th. You know, when Juve, after Calciopoli, Juve got back to Serie A. They finished 3rd. Then they finished 2nd with Claudio Ranieri, I believe. And then they had 2 years in which they finished 7th. Okay? And then what happened? And then they signed Antonio Conte, and then Pirlo came, and then Pogba came. They didn't spend enormous amounts of money at first. They made some mistakes, whatever. But they won 9 titles in a row. That team that they built came out of 2 years of 7th place finishes. It's not the end of the world. And that's your worst case scenario.
Very good points. But what do you think? Do you think Juve will make it to the top 4 this season? And if yes, which of the current top 4 will miss out the Champions League spot?
I would expect Juve to make it. And I would expect it may be Atalanta who drops out. But I don't know. I mean, it's 50-50. And I just say that because it could just easily be Napoli. I mean, Luciano Spalletti has far surpassed my expectations. I think Luciano Spalletti is a genius, and I think Napoli have a tremendous team in terms of talent. But Luciano Spalletti is also somebody who has self-destructed in the past, you know, who's unpredictable, who can be difficult. He's a very odd person. So that could yet happen. So if I'm Juve, you know, I don't take top 4 for granted, but I think I'm in a pretty good position that one of those two, Atalanta or Napoli, are going to falter, and then I can move into the top 4.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what happened. And what about the situation with Lazio and Roma? I mean, there is a tough battle at top of the table. They changed coaches at the beginning of the season, but the situation is not better than the previous season if you compare both of the teams. What could they have done better, do you think?
So I think, you know, in Lazio's case, essentially the same team, right? Minus Correa. I think they went for Sarri because of his style of play. But, you know, after 5 years or however long it was of playing 3 at the back with Inzaghi, suddenly moving to 4-3-3 is different, and it's going to take time, and it's the transition. As for Roma, you know, what could they have done differently? I have to be careful because there's a strange group of people on social media who, you get this with fans of Messi and Cristiano, but I think the third biggest constituency is fans of Jose, who, you know, pull everything out. I think last season, under Paulo Fonseca, Roma were in the top 4 in March. This was despite the fact that they had a change of ownership, that they had no director of football, that Edin Dzeko was having a poor season and was arguing with the coach, that Nicola Zaniolo was out for the entire year, and that they had injuries up and down the lineup. Since then, and they ended up finishing 7th, but they also reached the semifinals of the Europa League, which is not nothing. You know, they beat some big teams along the way. And I look at where Mourinho is, and, you know, I think they were one of the 5 biggest spending teams in Europe over the summer. They spent more than anybody in Serie A. And they brought in Mourinho, who is paid a ton of money because he's Mourinho, because he's got this track record of success. And I always think, like, if I'm going to change a manager, it's because I want this guy to do better than the guy before. Now, Mourinho has indicated that, you know, you can't judge over 6 months and he's building for the future. But I also think this attitude of like, well, must be a reason why we finished 7th last year. We can't just spend our way out of it. I'm like, yeah, no, any Muppet can spend their way out of it. The reason I got you is because you're special. You know, I don't want to hear these things. We need to spend money. I want to hear, I can hear those from mediocre people. I can hear those from, tell me those things when you're second and you want to become first, right? But for you to crap on the players who are here and the achievements of last season, which really I thought it was really special what they did last season in a place like Rome. And then you're saying like, oh yeah, we'll probably finish 7th, same as last year because, you know, there must be a reason we finished 7th. Yeah, I mean, maybe the reason was you weren't here last year and you are here now. And that's why you finished in 7th. I don't know. I think it's difficult to judge because some games you know, Roma play really well and you can see the intensity, you can see what he's trying to bring. Other games, not so much. I'm curious. I think Mourinho needs to rediscover what made him great in the first place, which is his relationship with the players, his relationship with the fans, and his actual work that he does on the training pitch. So far, the relationship with the players seems to be good, at least the ones who play. Relationship with the fans, the fans are with him. We need to see that step up on the coaching, you know, on the coaching front, get back to what he has shown in the past that he can do. And then if you do that, if you show you're on course for top 4 or forward progress, then yeah, you can get more investment. But if they just went out and spent 300 million now and, you know, they signed, I don't know, Jules Koundé and Bernardo Silva and so on, like, sure, anybody can do that. But, you know, the owners have already spent a ton of money. And I think it's going to take some time, but there are some things that he's done really, really well so far. Others, there's still work to be done.
Yeah, cool. One last question on Serie A. Can you please let us know about your thoughts on Dusan Vlahovic and his future?
Wow. So obviously Vlahovic has been phenomenal. You know, I think when you're talking about young center forwards in Europe, when you take away Erling Haaland, you know, Vlahovic is the next obvious one. As you know, he's got 18 months left on his contract, which is exactly what we talked about earlier. This is the moment when you either extend him to a new deal or you sell him. Difficult thing for Fiorentina is, according to Fiorentina anyway, his agents are asking for enormous amounts of money. You know, we're talking 15, 18 million euros in commissions to either extend the contract or to move to another club. We're talking plus 10% of the sell-on fee from when he sold later. Now, they say those are in line with market rates, but they're not. They're not unless your name is Mino Raiola and your client is Erling Haaland. Well, as I've said before, Vlahovic is not Haaland, not yet. And more importantly, Raiola got that money when he took him from Salzburg to Dortmund, but that was because the fee was only 20 million because he had a release clause at Leipzig. So you're asking a club to pay 70 million to Fiorentina, which is his market value, plus another 18 million. You know, that's a big difference. That's why you didn't, you know, Raiola got the big commission, A, because it's Haaland, B, because he's Raiola and he can elbow his way to it. He's built up the status. He's got enough influence with different players around Europe that he can do that. And C, because he was only going for 20 million. You know, that's not the case with Vlahovic. So I don't know. I think for now, Fiorentina's attitude is, like, nobody's going to pay us 70 million and then pay all the money to him. Let's wait and see where we are. Maybe he can take us into the top 4 this year, and then we'll have more money next year. And then maybe we can either look at selling him in the summer, or maybe he'll be worth more. Maybe we'll be willing to, maybe the agents will drop their demands. Maybe he'll re-sign with us. I think it's the right strategy, personally. While he's there, he seems motivated. He wants to play.
Exactly.
You know, but I think the guy who's suffering because of this is Vlahovic.
Yeah, cool. I have one question on Premier League as well. If you talk about Ralf Rangnick and Antonio Conte, we know that at least one of these two will miss the fourth Champions League spot in the Premier League. Would it be a huge failure for either of these two if that's the case?
It would be much bigger. Well, I mean, both took over when the season went on, was going on, right? And both took over teams that were outside of top four. So I don't think it would be a huge failure if they both missed out. From a club's perspective, it's a bigger failure, of course, for Manchester United because they were second last year, and because they have a much higher wage bill than Tottenham do. You've seen an improvement with Conte Tottenham on the pitch. I think it's a little more of a straightforward improvement in the sense that, you know, Conte comes in, the players know who he is because they've seen him win a Premier League title. He knows how he wants to play, and he goes out and he works maniacally at it. Rangnick landing at Manchester United is a different story. Ralf Rangnick may be a big name to you or me or people who follow football in Germany or football in general, but, you know, the rank and file fan and even the average United player, like, have I seen this guy on the sidelines in the Champions League? No. Did he come from Bayern? No. Who the hell is he? And then they find out that he's only coached 2 of the last 10 years, so he needs to make an adjustment there. The other big thing is football philosophy. What made him great at Hoffenheim and Leipzig and Schalke is his style of play, his pressing systems. Well, this team isn't built for that. You know, this is a team, if you play, we saw it early on, right? When he wanted to play his, you know, for lack of a better word, 4-2-2-2, you need a front four that run like maniacs and go side to side and press, right? Are you going to ask Cristiano Ronaldo to do that? Not because Cristiano Ronaldo is lazy, but because Cristiano Ronaldo, as great as he is obviously older. Maybe you don't want Ronaldo sprinting 50 times a game because he's not going to be as lucid when he gets the ball. If you play that system, you need serious attacking fullbacks. Right. I have Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw. You know, which is probably why Dala and Alexeis have been playing, even though maybe they're not as good. So I think between the two as a club, it would be a much bigger failure for United. And maybe they should have revisited. They said, maybe rather than Rangnick, maybe after Solskjaer should have had somebody who can have an instant impact, just get us into the top 4 and then leave, rather than having one of those grand vision types like Rangnick. For Conte, he's starting from a lower base. So I think they're playing better. You know, I think even finishing 5th or 6th wouldn't be a tragedy for Tottenham. It would still represent an improvement over last year, and he's got more mitigating circumstances, I think.
Nice. My last question is about Gianluca Vialli. I know that you have a close relationship with him and you had a collaboration with him on writing 2 books. What was his role in the success of Italy in Euro 2020?
Well, the headline is he would say he was the good luck charm, right? Because he had this weird tradition where the bus took off without him one day, forgot him. So from then on, like the bus always takes off. And then he comes on later. And, you know, I saw it totally revitalized and rejuvenated Gianluca Vialli. I mean, people who followed his career will know that Roberto Mancini is one of his best friends in football. And obviously the two were together from a very young age at Sampdoria many years ago. They have quite different personalities. And, you know, his role there was basically to be a counterweight to Mancini. You know, somebody who I think Mancini would view on his level, even obviously Mancini was a boss, but who would view as an equal, but wasn't part of the actual coaching setup. So when he had an idea, he was almost like a consigliere, an advisor. He also played a very big role, from what I understand, in helping forge a lot of unity in the group, which is something that I don't think you necessarily always need unity in the group to be successful. Italy teams have been pretty disunited in the past and sometimes even won. But I think in this group of players, that was absolutely critical. And he played a big part on that. You know, Mancini he's been described to me as a functioning introvert. Vialli's much more of an extrovert. And I think that sort of yin and yang, they kind of complemented each other very, very well. I think for him personally, it was just an unbelievable experience because obviously having had to, you know, as he puts it, walk alongside, he doesn't like calling his illness a battle. He just says it's a journey, and it's a journey with a companion who I wish wouldn't be there. But having walked that journey the last couple of years and been through some tough times, this was just an incredible tonic. It was an incredible lift for him, being able to be part of this adventure and to have it, you know, finish so well. So yeah, no, for him, I think he played an important role in his own way, but I think he'd be the first to say, you know, however much he might have given to the Italian national team at the Euros, he got a lot more out of it.
Interesting. I really wish to see him again on the bench of Italy, hopefully in World Cup. Thank you so much, Gab. I really enjoyed our talk, and I'm pretty sure our listeners would enjoy it as well. It would be an honor for us to have you again on our show in the future.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine. It would be an honor to be back as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.